Hey guys, what is going on? Welcome back to Tech Pro, and today in this video I'll be showing you how to build your very own computer here in 2020. So the first step is to actually pick out which parts to use. So a lot of people will use 8 gigabytes of RAM and something like an Intel Core i5 and a GTX 1650. So a lot of these parts that are in this video are used and I got a really good deal on them. However, you can find them brand new for a pretty decent price for the most part. So let's go ahead and actually get started here with the build. For the CPU, we have an Intel Core i5 4670K. This is a really awesome CPU for the money, and a lot of times you can actually find these for pretty cheap, and these are really awesome for gaming systems here in 2020. So if you're looking for a pretty good bang for the buck, this is a really good CPU to get. Also, something like an Intel Core i7 is another really good option if you're looking to spend a bit more money. Okay, so to get started with the build, we need to actually open up our CPU socket. So go ahead and press down on this retention arm right here. Press out to the side, and then it should go ahead and lift itself up here. You guys can see the socket is now open. So now you can see all these pins here in the socket. You don't ever want to touch these with your fingers or anything really at all, unless you bent one and trying to bend it back. So try your best not to do that. That happens a lot of times with first time builds, but it's nothing to be worried about if you follow this tutorial correctly. So now if we look at our CPU, you can see we have a little triangle right here. It's kind of hard to see, but it's right there. And you want to go ahead and line that up with the triangle on your motherboard, which mine is right here. Okay, so now that we have found the triangles, we can go ahead and actually set our CPU into place here. So this does not require any force. You can simply set the CPU in the socket. Okay, so we now have our CPU installed. You can give a little wiggle if you want to, just to make sure it's in the socket. And then you can go ahead and set down this little cover plate right here, and you can press down on the retention arm. You may hear a little bit of crackling, and that's completely fine. It's just a lot of force on the CPU, and that's just the way these sockets are designed. So now we can go ahead and install our memory. So now if we look at the memory, we should have a little notch here. You want to go ahead and line that up with the notch on your motherboard, and go ahead and make sure all these are open so we can install our memory. So if you only have 2 sticks of memory, you want to install them in the lighter colored sockets. When you install your memory, make sure you're pushing down on both sides at the same time, and then you should hear a click, which is essentially telling you that your memory has been installed. Okay, so now all 4 memory modules are installed. So now it's time to go ahead and install our cooler. So a lot of coolers will actually have pre-applied thermal paste on the bottom, and if it does, then you do not have to use your own thermal paste. If your cooler does not have its own thermal paste pre-applied, you will either have to buy a tube like this, or chances are your cooler comes with some that's in like a bag or a tube like this. Alright, to apply the thermal paste, you simply line up the tube here at the middle of the CPU, and you simply have to apply about a pea-sized dot here. So this is how much paste I installed. This is how much you should install. Really, it's not that much, but a little bit goes a really long way. We don't want to install too much thermal paste like the other build that was on YouTube. Most of you should probably know what I'm talking about. Alright, so I'm not going to be showing you how to install this specific cooler because every cooler is a little bit different, and I don't want you to, take my instructions and install your cooler the incorrect way. Alright guys, so I now have my CPU cooler installed. Unfortunately, I did have to cut this part out because it's the same regardless of what kind of computer you're building. I do promise you this is the only part where I had to leave you on your own, and the rest of the build should be the exact same, like I said, regardless of what kind of computer you're building. So let's go ahead and install this into the case. If you have an M.2 SSD here, you can go and install that, but as you guys can see, we don't have one, so let's go ahead and skip to the next instructions. Alright guys, so now it's time to install all of our parts into the case. The first step is to go ahead and grab the I/O shield here for your motherboard. You can see here's mine. This one's a black one. Sometimes they're silver, sometimes they're multiple colors, but every I/O shield is pretty similar regardless. So what you want to go ahead and do is line this up with the matching slot here in the back of your case, and all you have to do is simply press the bottom end first, just like so, and then press each corner in. And that is it. Your I/O shield is now installed and ready to go. Alright, go ahead and grab your motherboard, and you can go ahead and actually get this installed. This case is pretty spacious, so you can see here I'm lining my motherboard up, and all you have to do is simply line this up with the I/O shield and make sure there are no cords in the way or anything, and it should just slot right into place. Alright, you can go ahead and screw in your motherboard now. Make sure you are screwing into the standoffs and not the bottom of your motherboard tray, because if you just screw your motherboard directly into the motherboard tray, it'll short and it won't power up. Alright, so now we can go ahead and install a graphics card. I got a pretty good deal on this. It's the same one that I have in my main computer. This is the EVGA RTX 2070. Make sure that if you have one of these little locks here, that it is unlocked here on your motherboard. Not every motherboard has that. A lot of the lower end boards don't have that. But if yours does have it, then make sure you have unlocked it. And you can go ahead and slot your graphics card into place. And there you go. Make sure you have screwed your graphics card into place here. If your graphics card has these power connectors, make sure you use them, because if you don't plug it in, it'll either just not post, or whenever you turn your computer on, it'll just tell you that you have to plug that in. So there's really no way around these. They're kind of a pain to plug in, but you only have to do it once. So not the end of the world. This graphics card has an 8-pin as well as a 6-pin. So I'm going to go ahead and plug both those in. You guys can see those are plugged in. And we'll just go ahead and make sure that's all cable managed. And now we can go ahead and plug in our USB 3. In this case, ours is right here next to the graphics card, so we'll go ahead and plug that in. These are kind of a pain to plug in. A lot of times they don't really feel like they're plugged in, even though they really are. So yeah, those are kind of terrible. Go ahead and plug in your SATA connectors. Sorry, I know you guys can't really see this, but it's pretty simple. Essentially at this point, if it plugs in, it's in the correct place. Alright guys, so now it is time to go and plug in your front panel connectors. ASUS has this really awesome Q connector right here, which allows you just to plug them into this and then plug this whole thing into your motherboard. A lot of motherboards don't have this, so if you have an ASUS board, you're lucky. If you don't have an ASUS board, sorry, but you're going to have to plug them into your board, and sometimes it's kind of difficult. Anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and plug mine in here. And we have now just about finished building our PC. We're just going to go ahead and plug in our 24-pin connector. This specific power supply is a 20 plus 4-pin connector, so you can see here it's separate, but all you have to do is simply attach them and plug it in just like so. This is by far one of the most difficult plugs to connect, but once again, really you only have to do this once. So you can go ahead and plug in your CPU power connector at this time as well, since we're kind of just plugging all these in here. This one is just like the 24-pin connector, but it is only 8-pin, sometimes 4-pin depending on your motherboard. A lot of the overclocking boards will have 8-pin or even 12-pin or 16-pin, just depending on, you know, what level board yours is. Mine's an 8-pin, so we just plug in 8 here. Alright, so now if your computer is using fans, which most of them are, you want to go ahead and install those here. So I'm going to go ahead and install the one for my CPU cooler. This one just kind of connects like so, just sort of clamps onto the cooler. And you want to go and grab your fan connector and plug that into your motherboard. So mine is right down here. Alright, so that's done. You can tuck this under your motherboard if you'd like. You can really do whatever you want with this cable. So yeah. Alright, so that's finished. Let's go ahead and install any other fans that we have in this computer. Alright, let's go ahead and power on the machine here, and let's see what happens. So we have lights inside of it, it looks like. And we have a post here on the computer. You guys can see it is displaying an image, which is absolutely great. That's exactly what we wanted. And you guys can see everything seems to be accurate. Total of 16 gigs of memory, 4670K. That's good. Let's go ahead and press F1 here on our keyboard. And you guys can see it takes us straight into the BIOS. So this is exactly what we wanted. You guys can see this is the ASUS UEFI BIOS here, so we'll go ahead and actually close out of here. We don't need this. This is where you do all your overclocking and stuff. So that is how you build your very own gaming PC here in 2020. It's really not as difficult as certain people may say. It's actually a really easy process. It's just pretty time consuming. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video.